Good afternoon and welcome to this January 16th HR Business Services Committee meeting, and we'll be getting started today at 4:35. I want to start out this meeting by welcoming our new HR Business Services members, Member Sadowski and Member Banks, so welcome. It's great to have you. And we want to acknowledge the fine work of our previous two HR Business Service Committee meetings, members, so as we move into this new year, we're moving in with some new members. Let's get started on our agenda, and we have no guest presentation for this meeting, so we're going to move on to start out with our departmental reports and starting out with human resources. Director Severance, would you like to start out by giving us our little summary here for January?
Yes, that would be great. So you'll see some of our staffing has kind of waned off. It's just the time of year, but we're having definitely new hires and resignations, so it looks like there's a really good balance of how we're, people are leaving, but we're also hiring people kind of at the similar rate. The number of retirements listed under certified, again, this is capturing what's going to the board, so it doesn't necessarily mean they've already retired. It may just mean that they've given notice of retirement, so it's not necessarily that we are down that staff number, just as a point of information. HR department updates. The district submitted their Grow Your Own grant today for 12 p.m. Or so. So hoping that we will receive those funds from MDE. We would likely know, I'm guessing the end of March, early April, for a project start of July. And we'll talk more about that as we get closer to and we receive results.
And if I could interject there, I just wanted to say thanks to Teresa and the team for all the hard work that went into that grant. She's been putting countless additional hours in. If you remember when we were at the conference, she was seldom hanging out with us in the lobby. She was upstairs because she was finishing the grant, writing the grant. She's worked really closely with Brenda Fisher at College of St. Scholastica, as well as others here in our district. And it's really part of our advancing equity and improving systems portions of our strategic plan, thinking about how can we have a more diverse workforce that mirrors our student population. Thank you.
Thank you. We're gearing up for 24-25 staffing season. We've posted all of our summer school positions, and then we do have ESY that'll get posted here within the next week or two.
Director Severance, could you just remind us what ESY is again? What does it stand for again?
Extended school year.
Extended school year, okay, thank you. And by us, I mean me, so.
We're also gearing up for what will be job fairs coming forward in 2024. So we do have one already scheduled for the Hermantown Chamber of Commerce that'll happen on February 8th, and then there are 3 virtual ones that we will be looking into as well, and those are specific, those recruitment for the virtual are specific on licensed teachers, whereas the one in Hermantown is for any of our staff. And then as ongoing system improvement efforts, we finally have our maintenance group on electronic timesheets. So they started clocking and using that on the 8th of January, which we will not see until one more pay cycle, but we're working through any of the bugs. There's a lot of programming that goes along with that because they have overtime and out of class type of thing, so we have to allow for every scenario. So working on that, but so far so good. Benefits, hosting a Calm Challenge. We talked about Calm at the COW last week related to our employee wellness, and there will be a excuse me, a challenge in January for employees to find time for themselves. It's about having mindful minutes, and then we will have a retirement session coming on January 17th, which is tomorrow, and then we have a couple others scheduled for later in this early part of the year for people that are considering or looking at potentially retiring in the end of the school year. And then also working on our employee wellness fair that we also spoke about at the COW last week, so that'll be our next big project.
And just as a reminder, when do our certified staff have to notify us of retirement?
February 1st.
February 1st, that's what I was thinking. So this January 17th, could this count towards that February 1st if they're getting that information?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
And then you'll see the list of hiring updates there. We have a couple open positions in our certified area. And then similar to what we've had in previous months under the non-certified, still looking for transportation and maintenance, big focus on those two. And then we do have a handful of paraprofessionals as well. Contract negotiations, we are hoping, we have a meeting with the ISPECs again tomorrow, so we are hoping that that will come forward to this board at the next board meeting. And we're still actively negotiating with the education directors and the Federation of Teachers. And the next teachers' date is scheduled for the end of this month, January 25th. And then January 30th is our next scheduled meeting with our directors unit. As we've said before, the clerical unit's still waiting for the teachers to settle before starting negotiations, and we are still waiting for the DeWIA group to request to negotiate.
And I can't remember, did the paras, they're waiting for the teachers as well, aren't
No,
they?
the paras settled in the
The paras
fall.
settled? Okay, I couldn't remember where the paras were. Okay, so the paras are settled. Great. Okay.
I have a question. I'm just wondering how many actual unions are within ISD 709, just so I have that information.
There are 11. Welcome.
Do we have any other questions about HR? Great, we'll move on. Next, we're going to move on in our new format here for our, moving on to business services. The next report we will have is our enrollment report, and we have a new way to look at it this month, so I'm really excited. Yes, please.
Hi. So for the enrollment report, this is something that's always been the same, the enrollment report. So it's by school. And so far, as of January 1st, we have 8,077.84 enrollments. And as you can see, it's listed by total enrollments and then total enrollments from K through 12. And that includes our resident districts and our regular site schools. Are there any questions on this one?
And just as a reminder, we currently have an enrollment of about 8,077 students, and we budget based on the number of students we have. So we have budgeted for around, can't remember, 79, 89. So we have more students than what we built our budget on, and we generally try to do that.
Yes.
Yes.
And you'll see from month to month that it fluctuates, our enrollment numbers.
And we do see changes in enrollment, especially in the secondary grades, following the first semester, just because we have early graduation. So it's not surprising to us that we see some changes in enrollment in secondary as they go down as students have graduated early.
So what is our enrollment? What is our enrollment this time this year to last time this year?
John, I knew you were going to say that. Let me tell you.
That's the exciting number, I think.
So it was 8,087.
So we're pretty steady.
Yep. It's pretty consistent.
I would like to just say that thank you to Kayla Carroll. She's our Mars coordinator and has been in the position for about 1 year now, a little less. And we have come together, and I've spoken with Committee Chair Dirk Eder as well, that the way that the report was being presented was, I felt, difficult to understand. And so we are now providing the same 3 reports that we provide the principals. So when you're in your computer and you look at it, we're showing it by grade, by school. We're showing it by school, by month. So there's many different ways to look at it. And we're looking at our traditional enrollment and then our non-traditional enrollment, which includes our residential. So we hope this works for everybody. We will show you year-to-date information. And for instance, the end of year, which is EOY, we ended up with 7,928 students. And this year, year to date from last year, we are showing that we are down 149 students, but the trends pick up and go down at the, around December, students graduate and we'll see them go back up again. So they are going to fluctuate. The bottom line is when it really counts in June, that Ms. Carroll here has to present now the final numbers to MDE in December of 2024. What's the date? The 15th of December. We will actually get the final counts, not till next December 15th. So we're always roughly 6 months behind. So you're going to see numbers go up and down, and they will trend like that. I asked Kayla to come and meet you and to show you the face who does our Mars coordination. She does a great job. And if you have ever any questions, we can certainly answer them for you. Or if we don't know, we'll get the answer for you. Okay, you're welcome.
Do we have any questions on the enrollment report? Good. Great. Moving on to child nutrition, you can see year over year we're up in both breakfast and lunch since the state has paid for free breakfast and lunch for all of our students. Of note is that we did apply for a full plate farm to school grant for this year. However, we were unsuccessful, and it appears that the state of Minnesota was really gearing this grant towards schools and districts that had not previously gotten any of these grants. But it's good to see that our students are taking advantage of the breakfast and lunch that we provide. Do we have any questions on the child nutrition report?
I would like to say something.
Please.
So, coming up in February, March, and April, I'll start revising our current year budget. Our food service budget, when we get to the budget summary, we're showing is really trending fast and high as far as expenditures. I've added now a new column with percentages so we can kind of see that. But what we need to do is redo our expenditures and revenues. So we think we're actually going to balance out. But our revenue right now is roughly 4 million something. Our expenditures are around the same. We're going to be increasing those almost up to 6 million, just because the free lunches has been, overwhelmingly positive. But we will get funds to offset it. So right now, it looks like it's really trending really fast, but I'll be showing that in a revised budget, that they will be almost one-to-one. We're not allowed to make money in food service, so if we have a slight balance, and if that percentage is too high, it's generally 15%, then we have to go back in and spend the money. Generally, it's on equipment, it's not really for salaries. So we don't want to see an excess balance in food service. But I will be increasing the revenue and expenditures, and it'll be one-to-one. Okay?
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I thought I had read somewhere where it said that the state of Minnesota had under-budgeted for the program. Can you talk a little bit about that? I'm sorry, could you say that again? Under-budgeted for the nutrition program?
They under-budgeted?
The state of
Yes,
Minnesota.
the state of Minnesota.
Right. Well, the universal meals, I think they did not anticipate how well it was going to take off. They're strictly paying for lunches. The children are not allowed to go in for a second time around to do the à la carte. That they have to pay for. But I think going forward, if I look at that correctly, I think ultimately they'd love to see an à la carte line as well. That could be funded, but that's down the road. But right now, they're only funding the first pass through, the basic meal. Okay, so I think that's probably what they mean by being underfunded.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to our facilities departmental report. What we can see is our maintenance and operations. We know that our facilities maintenance crews are working hard to close work orders and currently have quite a few work orders open. The facilities have begun constructing the new computer maintenance management system. That framework, we are looking at operational licensing inspections with our fire marshals to start that began January 3rd. We've had our high school auditoriums inspected on November 27th. And what did we say? Reports on East and Denfeld were received on the 11th, and the Lincoln Park pool is currently closed due to mechanical issues. And I do see later on, we do have a commercial pool renovation service. I believe that's for Lincoln Park. That bid under consent agenda 4C, it's the first bid, bid 1321. We have a work order that's been issued for the two Smith clock and bell for the Denfeld clock repair. We've got some French drain work happening at Lowell. We're looking at resurfacing the pool at Lincoln Park. And we've got some masonry work on Denfeld. We've got some stuff happening at the playground at Lowell, and the DNT Architectural and Engineering is beginning renovation. Discussions with our legal representation, we're still working on PSS Track Lane 1, and we should probably change that PSS to whatever the new name of the field is. So maybe for the next month. That just took me almost a year to spot that. And we're also in discussions with Mark Knutson on liabilities involved with the nature playscape. Could somebody talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, so we are in the process of bringing forward a policy through the policy committee for playground construction that will also address current playgrounds, because we do have some of our playgrounds and specifically the nature playscapes that are out of compliance and have been safety issues. So we're working on a policy. We are working specifically with the Lowell group because they did have some of their equipment removed and kind of what that looks like. And in doing so, we've reached out to our attorneys as well as Mark Knutson just to get some information on what the district's liability is going forward so that we are very clear in the policy how we're articulating that to the groups that want to put playgrounds in, such as the community groups, the PTAs, that kind of thing.
Are you talking about out of compliance in terms of ADA compliance and then other safety compliances?
More safety compliance than ADA compliance.
All right. And this has to do, I'm making the assumption that playscapes and playgrounds that the district has put in, we understand that compliance issue, but this might be for groups that want to come in and put some equipment in, like those playscapes that have been at like Piedmont and some of the other places. Is that what you're talking about?
So the nature playscapes are typically wanted to be brought in.
Great, thank you. And then lastly, what do we got going? We're still working on snow removal. And then we have some positions open, but we're getting those custodial positions filled. And building operations, we do always want to send a shout out to them every month for the outstanding job that they have done during the summer and this year. So we always appreciate what they have to do. My question is for custodial positions, since we're getting closer to having a lot of those positions filled, and we know we've heard from our community that they'd like more access to our buildings. Are we making some progress on that? So if community organizations are asking those questions?
We are making some progress on that
Great.
because it has really primarily been just lack of staff to be able to keep up with the community demand. And so we are moving forward with being able to have the community in those buildings more
That's great.
frequently as we staff up.
Thank you.
We appreciate that, and I appreciate the work of the department getting extra custodians. One thing we heard at the West Duluth Business Group is that when we were soliciting information on like why referenda weren't successful, part of what came up was frustration that people can have a hard time using the buildings. Yet I know that we're working very hard and improving that ability, and really appreciate the work there.
Okay, moving on to the technology departmental report, and this is, oh, I'm sorry. Do you have any questions for facilities? My apologies.
I have just a quick question around the Denfeld clock tower. That seems to keep coming up. Was this repair related to the other repairs that happened? Or is it yet another thing that
Yes.
came up?
So if you might recall when we had the reconstruction and the fix of the clock tower, we had our students make the hands. The mechanisms that held the hands could not support the weight because it wasn't designed to do that. So part of this project is to actually reconfigure that so that we can still use those hands, but we're working on the mechanisms to make them more durable and so that we can continue to have the clock run, because right now it won't run because of that
Got it.
disconnect.
Okay, thank you. And that was such a neat collaborative project too, so.
Yes.
Thank you.
Moving on to technology. Welcome, Bart. Why don't you get started?
Thank you. I first start off with cybersecurity, and I listed for the last 2 years what our cybersecurity phishing rate has been. As you can see, it goes down and it goes up, and it is not really trending in the right direction, I feel. And below that, I listed what the industry average is. People without training, any cybersecurity training or phishing training, is usually 32.4%. After 12 months of having training and being phished, that's usually around that 5% range, and ours are way higher than that. This month, we have another campaign going on, and I just looked at it, and it's 6.81%. So that's not good for our district. So we need to work on that.
And I would also just add, our insurance bill for cybersecurity every year, it seems to me, if I'm remembering correctly, is going up by like double digits percentage-wise, just because it's very, very expensive. We pay well over $1 million now, and that actually was a pretty good rate because we work really hard on our cybersecurity. So looking at this data is irritating to me. So I know that this is something Bart and I've talked about, and something we'll continue to think about, how we figure out how to make sure that our employees are learning the difference, making sure that they're not clicking some of those things, and protecting our data, because we have a tremendous amount of very sensitive data. And if you look at big districts like Minneapolis and I believe St. Paul have both had some pretty significant data leaks. So we want to make sure that we are doing the best we can to protect the data of our families and our kids.
And I want to let you know that this goes beyond just our employees, it goes to our contractors. So anybody who has an ND account, anybody who has access to our services also has to take this training or some cybersecurity training, and they also are phished on a monthly basis. So if they do fail, they get a reminder, here's some training, why this was a phishing email, how to recognize that in the future.
Can you identify the name of some of those organizations?
Some of the the KnowBe4 that's a nationwide organization. I know they do a lot of schools. That's where that graph came from. We were on KnowBe4 for their fish training probably back in 17 and 18. Then we moved to a different vendor, and then we're with InfoSec IQ right now.
Thank you. And what are the other organizations that we partner with, like the colleges that may also receive some of those phishing emails? Are you indicating that some of those student accounts would also receive phishing emails?
It'd be anybody who has an ND account, so the Teachers on Call would receive it.
That's what I was asking. Yep.
Keyzone also receive it. You know, any of the accounts that we have, any of the people that are non-district but they're working in the district, they need access to our systems. Also receive the same ones. Mm-hmm. Yep. So the next one is just the Google security. It just talks about how many email messages received, how many were rejected, how many were in the spam folder, identified as phishing, suspicious attachments, spoofing, added the virus one. That was a new one this year, or this month, last month, or malware. And then below is the accounts we have. Our accounts have gone up a little bit. Our storage has gone up. Files shared externally is down. Suspicious login is down. Failed login attempts is down. Our data losses have been up a little bit, but those have been blocked. We don't have any E-rate or RFPs or bids out right now. Then I go over the technology help desk tickets. 271 tickets were created, 304 were resolved, and 213 remain unresolved. for this last month. And then I know projects, we're still working on the AV in this room. They were supposed to be up here last Friday, but due to the weather, they canceled, so they were here yesterday. So I worked yesterday with them all day. So the microphones should all be balanced, which is good. So on the YouTube stream, it should be the same as in the room, how it gets amplified. There are still some things that they need to come up and still work on. Then I also shared our Google's carbon footprint. So that's our data center for Google, all our Google Drive and stuff like that. And they just added that this year. So it's kind of interesting to see, what we're using just on the Google front. If there's any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Bart. Are there any questions?
Would you recommend, excuse me, would you recommend that the school board receive the training? Or
Actually,
do we receive that?
the initial training comes in our vector training that happens in September. It's, that time. And then if you do fall for a phishing email, it does bring you to some training, or it shows you, here's the email, here's how you can identify, as a phishing email. There's like 5 key areas usually.
We can certainly add new board members or all board members into the vector training for the new ones that came in January. We wouldn't have to wait until September.
Yeah, we can actually put you in the InfoSec training as well, either one. But it would be good to go to the vector because that's what all our staff go through.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you. That's a great question.
I just had a quick question on the second page and third page with the little red arrows down and the green arrows up. Does that mean those numbers have gone up or down from last month? Kind of thing? Okay. And then my second question is, because I know you send out like fake phishing emails to see if you clicked on it. So if a staff member maybe receives one and doesn't click on it because I think it's spam, do they get a message saying, explaining that?
They do not. If you
Okay.
don't click on it, you won't get anything.
Okay.
If you, open it up and look at it and say, I'm going to delete this because, I'm not going to get the free Dunkin' gift card today or whatever. We don't
Yeah.
see any of that.
Okay. Just curious, because I know I've gotten a few and haven't clicked on it, so.
So
I have one thing I'd like to say. Bart, could you just spend like 30 seconds on what E-rate is to explain to our 2 new members to our board?
Sure. It's the federal program for school districts, libraries, for technology funding, and it's related to, like our wide area network services, our internet services, as well as our hardware that supports that. So anything that, it's not devices, but it'd be like our wireless access points were up here, our switches. So we have to apply for it each year, and then they review our applications or bid, and then they'll grant us the money for that. It's a matching, it's based on your free and reduced. So I think we get 50% at this time.
Sometimes Bart comes to me and says, I need to spend $1 million on this project, but he's like, but it's E-rate, so I know half of it, so.
So last
It's a
year
great
we-
program.
Yeah, last year we put in $1 million worth of wireless access points to help our blended learning across the district. This summer, we're putting in $1.4 million worth of new switches, and those are both E-rate programs. So we roughly 50% of those we got reimbursed for.
That's great. Thank you, Bart. Do we have any questions? Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bart. I appreciate you. Moving on to our transportation report. We have, in our transportation, we have both our district-owned vehicles and then our employees, our bus drivers, and then we also have contracted services through Voyager. So we have our own, and then we have Voyager coming in as well. It has been a challenging year for transportation. I know that there are times when I see at Lincoln Park or Piedmont or out east that some of the routes have to change just because of shortages in bus drivers. We're pretty tight on bus drivers. And Teresa and the district, we've worked really hard to try to attract those bus drivers, to try to get them to come and stay, but it's tough. So we have some good news, is that our 2 new buses they're here, right? Did our buses get here?
Yes, but we authorized a purchase of a used bus today for 60,000, yes.
Yeah, so that's great. So we have 2 new buses that came in, and then we have a used bus. Member Sadowski and I spent some time down at MSBA with the vendor who does our bus, who we bought buses from, so that was really fun. We got behind the wheel and faked driving like we do every year. So that's great. And we're going to have 2 vans that are going to show up this fall, correct?
We hope so. The contract agreement has changed, and we're not sure if schools will be able to get the pricing that we need to have to afford it.
Okay.
So that's more to that story.
As always. But I do know, how is everything has been implemented with the new software, and that seems to be,
Yes, it's doing great. They're working out bugs. They're becoming really familiar with the product, with the software. We were doing like a Google sheet on any address changes and whatnot, or new enrollments, and now we are doing 100% it's called ASR, and we're using the new software 100% now. So it took us a while to get there, but I'm thrilled.
yeah, and we had sort of a challenge at the beginning of the year because under some suggestions and great ideas from Assistant Superintendent Bonds for our secondary schools, we shrunk where we'll pick our kids up and bus them from for secondary it was 1.5 miles to a mile, or was it? Yeah, so we pick them up if they live a mile or over. So we had some challenges in the beginning. We had some challenges with the new software, staffing, but we really have done a lot of hard work, and transportation is doing a great job under still some pretty challenging environment.
And on that note, with the partnership with the DTA as well as those efforts, Mr. Bonds, our Assistant Superintendent, will be on Fox in the morning, Fox 21 tomorrow morning. So if you want to see a little more of Mr. Bonds, he'll be sharing about our transportation.
7? Oh, should have done it earlier, like 5:30 or something, right? No. Yeah. That's great. Do we have any questions on transportation?
So I know the DTA has had issues or concerns with hiring drivers, and now that I'm hearing this also, so can you talk a little bit about like the rate of pay for ISD 709 drivers, what kind of recruiting you're doing, or and what communities you're in with regard to that recruiting?
Yeah, I can speak to most of that. Right now, our rate of pay is roughly $21 an hour to start. We've been doing numerous recruitment efforts. We've done some online videos, we've done some billboards, we've done some ads on the radio, ads in TV at the news time, those type of things. We're pushing it out on our social media accounts through the district. We have a list of community groups that we also send all of our postings to, so we get it out to all the communities in that way in the area. One of the challenges I think that we have found, and Simone can speak to this as well, is the state changed their licensing requirements. And so that has taken, a lot of times we can bring somebody in as a bus helper and then get them skilled and trained and take a test and they are good to go. But the state, in changing their requirements now, it's a 6 to 8 week process. And if you are not from this state, and we've had several folks come to us in the last 3-4 months that are not, and their waiting period to do that, they have to go through a more intensive background check. So the one person we hired in the late summer still is not through the process yet to get their licensure. So there's some other competing factors other than what we've been trying to do. We will, like I said, be at recruitment fair here in February for the Hermantown Chamber, which is actually being held down at the Clyde. So we'll be able to get some Duluth community members there as well, hopefully, and then kind of seek what those opportunities are within the area to try to get out and recruit. And we have done some recruitment down at the Workforce Center. They have a monthly event down there that we've been at a few times to try to push out those jobs as well.
And if I remember correctly, we increased the pay for our bus drivers, didn't we?
We did increase the pay
Yeah.
for bus drivers as well as custodians for an effort.
Significantly, and that's on top of there was like a $5
Yeah.
increase per hour that when, I think it was 2001, when we were first starting to face the budget shortfall, we started with a $5 increase, and then we've had significant increases since then. Our bus drivers are in the same union as our maintenance workers, which sometimes creates, sometimes there can be some frustration because we're trying to pay more to our bus drivers because that's our shortest area, but then there's that factor. But no, I really appreciate the work that's being done in transportation, and then also we've had representation not just at the Workforce Center and the places you mentioned, but at the Denfeld Powwow and at Juneteenth and other events, trying to make sure that we're getting out to the full community and really increasing our reach.
And Director Severance, I would say, over the last probably 2 years, has worked really, really hard to do some better operationalize, thank you, operationalize the way that human resources runs and has done a lot of work there. So especially when it comes to recruiting and retention and just making that department just really cleaning it up. And so she's and her team has done an incredible job. So we appreciate that. Are there any other questions?
I don't know if it's a question, more of a comment. I knew a young woman many years ago who was a single mom, and she got a job driving one of our school buses. I wasn't on the school board at that time, but she was able to bring her child with. We let her do that. I don't know, just a comment. I thought that was really neat at the time. It gave her an opportunity for meaningful employment and a flexibility. So just wanted to share that. It could be there could be more opportunities out there, because when I look at $21 an hour to start, that's a really good wage.
Yeah.
And for someone who wants to make some money but is staying home with their kids, just a thought.
Yeah. Great. So now we move on to our recommended resolutions, and we have the first one, which is acceptance of donations to our Duluth Public Schools, and we'll talk about these and thank those people that made and organizations that made those donations at the full school board meeting. Let's see here. So after that, moving on, then we have our acceptance of grant awards to the Duluth Public Schools. You can look at that on page 14, and we'll talk more about those at our full school board meeting. And then lastly, we have our resolution providing for the issuance, sale, and delivery of $21 million taxable general obligation capital appreciation refunding bond series 2024A. And this has to do with the referendum that we just passed in November. So that's great to see that money coming back to the district. And we have a lot of thanks and graciousness for our community for allowing us to have this opportunity. So that's what we have for our recommended resolutions. And then we move on to our consent agenda. The first one, we have our HR staffing report, where you can sort of look over that staffing report and then kind of compare it to the HR departmental summary report, because that's where you see those resignations, hiring, all those different things. I always like to look through it and see what teachers or certified or non-certified staff I know or don't know. And then send an email to a teacher that leaves, and I'm like, come on, I know you want to retire, but stay and teach us math one more year, right? So that's our HR staffing report. Moving on to finances, you can see our financial report. And Executive Director Zunich, is there anything you'd like to talk about or explain for our new members on the financial report?
So this is the budget summary that I will present every month. It reflects the year-to-date amount. So the summary I've got in front of you right now is through December, pulled from Skyward. And it shows you our adopted budget, our revised budget, and that can change every month. And then what we've received or expended this year-to-date. And then I have an encumbered column there, so that tells us items that still haven't been paid for, but we have purchase orders sitting out there, or we have funds that are in transit that haven't gone through the bank yet. So the final column to the right is where our budget balance is for revenues and expenses. I just started adding that percentage column. It says percentage spent on January 1, 2024. With the superintendent's okay. All I'm telling you there is how much money we've received, the top part, to our budget. And at the bottom of the revenue line, we have received so far 30% of our budget. And then I've done that also for expenses, and that's mostly where I like to focus, because our revenue will end up coming in. Sometimes that comes in, we have a second payment from the state in May, so it'll look low, and then in May, it will jump back up again. I like to take a look mid-year, how fast or how little we're spending so our expenses. And we should generally be at 50% by mid-year. But bear in mind, we don't start paying teachers until September. So it should be a little bit less than that. So our general fund, we have food service and transportation, community ed, and operating capital. We have debt service, trust fund, dental insurance, and student activity funds. And as I explained before, our food service looks really high because we do have a big pan of gold bread purchase order sitting out there. And we also have not adjusted to all the expenditures that we've made so far with our free meals. And we need to add now our revenue to that. So we will be offsetting that. So I just want the board to be aware, transportation is trending high in expenses, but we've had to rely on our third-party bus company for assistance, and that costs us money. So that's where that price can come in. And our operating capital, that can be some facilities payments, it could be technology, but we always have a plan for that at the end of the year. So at the end of the year, when we do our audit, we will work closely to try and offset budget numbers by any revenues that we have sitting in restricted or reserved funds. So there's a lot of work that goes in there, but I just like to watch and see how the district is trending as far as expenditures.
Do we have any questions?
No, I just really appreciate the percentages, though.
Yeah. Thank you. I've just started
That's really
that.
helpful.
Yes, thank you.
And maybe not now, but I might meet with you and just hear more about what that looks like offsetting or the food budget.
I'd love to.
I'd be interested to learn more about that, so.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, the next piece of information we have is the escrow agreement refunding certificates of participation series 2019A and 2021B. Executive Director Zunich, is there anything to explain about that?
No, I would just like to add that this has mostly really all happened. It happened last week on Tuesday, and everything's been signed, but I like to get this into the board minutes. So you are aware that we have sold the 2 bonds, and we now call it 2024A, and we were able to get a good rate due to our bond rating, which was maintained a high rate. And so this is a formality to bring this to you, to this committee.
Now we'll move on. We have nothing under fundraising, and now we'll move on to bids, RFPs, and quotes. We have a first bid coming in, bid 1321, for a commercial pool renovation service. And you can see on this bid that we will be going with Horizon Commercial Pools for a cost of $220,000 roughly. Next, we have an RFP out, 320 engineering services for a transportation building addition, and I'd like to hear a little bit more information about that, please.
Sure. This is to extend our transportation building out here that will not only allow for our larger maintenance equipment once we move everybody up to this facility for our plowing equipment, that type of thing, and also provide a space for salt and sand that we currently have at the Garfield building.
Okay. Do we have questions? These are some wildly different bids between ICS and Design Tree and Northland, how do you go from 56,000 to 151? Like, how are they going to guarantee that they can do what we need to do for $56,000?
So I can provide a little background to the ICS. When we first initiated design for this building and the other buildings here, this portion was part of the bid that went out for the full project. And at that time, it was in addition to the building, it was a big additional space that had room for staff, break rooms, kind of all of that built into it. Then we didn't move forward with that as part of the build and design for this project. Now that we are needing it, we went back to ICS and asked for a quote, and they basically just took what was on their initial project design and gave that back to us. So the scope is different, and they didn't really quote us with what we were really asking to do.
Okay.
So that's
It. Thank you.
that's how we got the difference there.
Thank you for that explanation. Moving on to 5 miscellaneous information items. So we don't vote on this, whether it's a resolution or whether it's on the consent agenda. This is just information for us as a school board. So you can look at a significant number of expenditure contracts to go through all of those different expenditure contracts for December 2023. So this really is sort of informational for us. Moving on to page 157. Executive Director Zunich and I love these no-cost contracts. Boy, we love to talk about those. And you can see we have one from the Conflict Resolution Center for Denfeld High School. And then lastly, on page 163, as I get there, you can see that we have a couple grant applications out from our different district employees for a number of different projects that they're looking at. So that's part of our agenda. Do we have any questions on anything underneath the miscellaneous information items that you'd like to ask? Good. All right, that closes out our HR Business Services Committee meeting. Thank you very much at 5:22.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, and thanks to the new members in their roles. And I will go invite the rest of the